It's Wednesday, and it is time for another Business Analysis Live. My name is Susan Moore. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at IIBA.
And my name is Scott Bennett. I'm the Manager of Business Analysis here at the International Institute of Business Analysis. Thank you for joining us today. We've got an interesting topic. We've got a couple of guests that will be joining us today, and we're going to be talking about mastering influence.
Hmm.
So, if you're new to business analysis, this is a more advanced skill, so something to think about. But, Susan, what are your thoughts in terms of mastering influence and what you think people are going to get out of this?
I hope what they get out of this is that first, it's kind of a long game. It's not something that you can just apply like a technique. It's something that you've got to have some skills around. To your point, it's a little more of an advanced thing. But man, when this happens in organizations, it is powerful. It is such a great way to get people motivated to do things.
That's right. And we have two guests today that are going to share a practical example of this. We are live, so if you've got questions, put them in the questions and we will get to them a little later in the broadcast. So let me introduce Abigail and Heath. Hi there.
Hey,
Hey, good
hi.
morning.
Hey guys.
Thanks for joining us today. Why don't you introduce yourselves so the audience has a bit of background? We'll start with Abby.
Awesome. Well, hey, I'm Abby Gaddy. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Lister Hill Credit Union. I've been there for about 7 years, and I started off in process management. We did not have formalized process or project management, so over the last 7 years, I've had the exciting job to introduce the disciplines of process management, business analysis, and formalized project management. So that's been an exciting time.
That's great. We're going to have a wonderful conversation today. And Heath, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Heath Butler. I'm the Director of Change Management here at Lister Hill. I've been here about 8 years, started in marketing, got involved with Abby in the process world for a little bit, also worked in people ops. And then through all of that, we discovered we needed change management here. And so that was a really cool next step in this journey, was to be able to introduce that and pair that with process and project.
Yeah, that's great. So, Abby and Heath were presenting at the BBC Business Capabilities Conference. And we had heard a presentation from them and a success story that they had. So, why don't we start with that success story and give our audience a little bit of feel for that, and then we could talk about mastering influence.
Sure. So, like I mentioned, we were about, as a company, half the size that we are now about 7 years ago. We were very action oriented, but we lacked of the discipline of what process management and really formalizing project management could do for us. And so, from an expense standpoint, and just as a credit union, we wanted to be more forward and thinking and facing, and digitally, we were excited. And so through that time, I came in and started to, we were consulting at first, and then I was hired in as a specialist. So I was didn't have authority formally. I had buy-in from the management, but I didn't have any formal authority. And I spent about 2 or 3 years really trying to develop these systems and come in and teach people this new way of thinking, and had a lot of pushback from people who had been working the same way that they had been working for 30 to 40 years, and to their success, right? So we were trying to come in and immediately teach this new way of not being siloed and departmentalized, but mapping out processes and really going through maybe a more structured flow of work. And so through that journey, we ended up making some relationships with people like Heath and other people, where they kind of said, instead of spending so much effort with so little impact, trying to force people through these new ways of thinking, why don't we sit down and really clarify what's the pain points that we're trying to solve, and let's find what we're in the long run, what we think that process management can do. And when we started to change that focus from building structures and systems through authority to just building relationships, understanding what people's goals were, understanding why they did the things they did, that gave us the opportunity to show them this new way of thinking and the benefits that would have on them and our membership. And when we started there, we all of a sudden started seeing so much more movement and excitement and motivation and engagement and building true relationships and integrating to where we were able to achieve things faster, and really better than we had done in the past. So we were able to build this network of influence, rather than a network of just systems and authority, and started to see more things get accomplished. And from there, we've doubled in size. Even through COVID, we've been able to introduce and retain remote workers. There's been a lot of progress that we've made since we've been able to kind of crack that code.
Okay, and give us a little bit of sense of timing, Abby. So when you were working through and trying to get this work done, and it was it sounds like a hard push to try and get it done, and then all of a sudden you made a change and there was a difference. Tell us about that timeline.
Yeah, the irony was we were trying to instill process management, yet I felt like a lot of it was shotgun approaches of trying to see what would stick. And so for about 3 years, we focused really hard on trying to set these systems up. And we did have some success, but for those 3 years, it was a lot of effort with just not the impact that we were looking for. So when we switched, we took about a year to change focus, really build relationships, really integrate. And so from those 3 years of a lot of effort with maybe not the best impact to a year of slowing down and focusing on relationships, right at the tail end of that year, we started seeing more impact than we did the previous 3 years.
Wow.
I I think this says a lot, right? Because uh, I think many times we default to I'm just going to make people do this thing, right? Because that's what our project plan says. I'm going to make people adopt this thing, so we're going to do it, and just you don't see the benefits from that, and in a way. Um, Defaulting to spending time building relationships would seem like how do you track that on a project schedule? I mean, it would seem like there's not a lot of return on investment. But I think what you're saying is no, actually, if you know, put time into building good relationships, and I always say business analysis is a relationship business, um, then you actually can see more progress faster, maybe.
You can. And, we saw that happen a lot, even sort of adjacent to process. Abby was finding people who had a similar mindset of like, hey, we believe in process. We like to follow systems that produce consistent results, right? And there were pockets of people around the organization that believe that way. And so she found that and kind of connected us all together to do that. But then the influence that has is instead of one voice saying we should do things this way, it's now a group of people saying, hey, through their relationships that they have, we've multiplied that because now they're all saying the same message and taking the time to spend with people. We really focus a lot on middle management because they really do connect, strategy to everyone in the organization doing the work and spending that time with them, not to say, hey, we're here to get something for us. It's we're here to help you in your role. We want to make it easier and better for you. It's not anything for us. It's for all of us as an organization to reach something bigger than ourselves. And spending that time building relationships with them, building that trust, and that requires honestly humility to say, I don't have all the answers and I'm not here to tell you how to do your thing. I'm here to collaborate with you so that maybe we can figure something out better together. And that made a big difference.
So let's unpack that a little bit. I've heard this when we were talking before, but earn trust. Why is that important, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of what Heath said about, having humility, that's a big part of trust, is being able to be transparent and open about what knowledge we do have, but then also not have ego that when you think you have a certain knowledge, somebody else brings in maybe some conflicting thoughts, being able to look at that in a non-competitive way, being able to invite people to the table who might have a different thought process than you or different conclusions, and actually using that to build a more robust and diverse solution than holding people at arm's length, because that brings in what we would say maybe complexity. So I think humility is one of the most key parts of earning trust for sure, but also the really wanting to understand and empathize with the fact, and I guess giving the benefit of the doubt comes into that, where when people are operating in a certain way, trying to understand the why behind their operations and trying to give the benefit of the doubt that there might be things that we don't fully understand. And as business analysts, that's part of our job, right? Is to dig to that level of depth to understand the why of what's going on. That benefit of the doubt, that ability or that opportunity for someone to defend their work or their actions, that is just kind of common, common knowledge of we want other people to treat us that way too. And so I think that's part of it. Heath, what do you think?
I think the other part of that is just being consistent.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to come in and when you work really closely with someone on a project or mapping their processes, right? For us, as we were starting to do that for some of these, different roles, that was the first time anyone had ever really asked them how they did their job and why. And to be able to stick with them through that so that when a question came back up about a specific job duty or a role, now they have an ally who's saying, well, no, like, well, they've told me what this was, and this is why they were doing it this way. And this is the amount of work that goes into it. And so being able to stay consistent in the relationship with the person to kind of have their back a little bit, that earns that trust as well. So that then when there comes a time when we need to do something pretty quick and we just need to say, hey, can you do this? They'll respond so much differently than having no relationship at all.
Interesting. Yeah, in a world where we're trying to get things done so quickly, Susan mentioned this at the intro. Influencing is a long game. And it sounds like, Abby, through your experience, you were able to demonstrate that this way of influencing people really is much more productive than trying to do it through formal, hey, I've got the authority to do this, or we're doing the right thing. That influence seems to have taken you much further along in what you were trying to do.
Absolutely. You're laying the foundation that everything builds on. So the tricky part is that foundation's there whether you choose to build it or not. So you can either choose to build a bunch of structures on a faulty foundation and constantly you're reworking that way, or you can choose to put in some extra time, put in some, maybe go across your own job description by doing things that helps build trust with FaceTime and extra meetings. And, we talk about, kind of going back to trust, servant leadership. One of the best things that you can do especially in establishing influence is finding ways that you can responsibly, because yes, we have our own job and we have deliverables, but responsibly plugging in and serving other departments and other individuals, so that they can accomplish their goals and you are able to be a part of that, celebrate with them. And now there's trust and competency built. That foundation, all that does is carry you forward for the next several projects or strategic initiatives, to really have that foundation. And you think about it, we didn't mention this yet, but the 5 stages of team development, the norming, storming, that thing, you're that's what you're doing, is you're trying to get into that storming phase as fast as possible, so that you can get on the other side. And now you have this normal working relationship where you have trust that's built, collaboration that's built, those standards, communication. Once that's established, it's there as long as you're consistent. You're going to have to do it anyway. So if you're, do it fast, do it intentionally, and people will see that and kind of, they gravitate to that, as well as, you also spark kind of a movement where you see other people become open to that and they learn from you, and silos start breaking down.
As we're talking about this, I am reminded that organizations aren't just processes and the tools we use to do our job, but we're organizations of people. So we really have to work with people as just the humans that they are. And humans we're just messy. Right? We don't always want to do what we're told, or we've got other ideas, but this influence, really taking time to build relationships in organizations, just benefits organizations in a lot of ways, not just getting things done, but overall culture and morale and things like that, because it does involve transparency and honesty and all of those other things. So as business analysis professionals, I think this is an area where we can shine in the work that we do. We're not often decision makers, we don't have authority. So, the area where we can focus our efforts is on building those relationships, being able to speak for people in the organization who have knowledge or work that maybe is underrepresented. That's a fantastic way that we can start to build relationships and become trusted advisors in our organizations.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to share a bit of a story of doing influence wrong. So this was unfortunately a career limiting move that I went through in my career. We were making some changes in an organization, and I had the authority to make those changes. And there was a person of influence that I wasn't aware of. I wasn't paying attention to this, that came to me and said, "We can't do this tomorrow. We have to delay it." It was something that we had put a lot of work and effort into. And my response when someone pushes was to push back. And unfortunately, it was the wrong decision. I pushed back. We were peer to peer in an organization. It wasn't a hierarchy thing. And it came back around to the leadership cycle after it got escalated, where I was being an unreasonable person and was difficult to work with. So it was one of those things that I had the authority, had the right reason to do it. There was no reason the change couldn't move ahead because someone was a little bit nervous. But because I didn't stop and listen and I didn't have a relationship with that person, the change came back to hit me for about 3 years on a performance review cycle. That, oh, Scott's difficult to work with. So I just wanted to share that as a cautionary tale. You can really push hard given all the right reasons, but if you push hard without, I think what you're sharing with us, the relationship, the empathy, the understanding, it might not be the right decision to make.
Yeah, it's better. We've learned it is better to say we can than I did, right? Like building it together, and even like listen to an episode a couple weeks ago on change management. Like they were talking about, hey, we're not just going to hand a change to you. We're going to build the change together. That again, the relationship, the influence part of that is such a big deal. Of yes, you can do it on your own. It's not always the easiest path. It's better to build a team and build that coalition who says, hey, we see where we're going. We want to go there together. And we think that we're going to be better doing this together than we would on our own.
Yeah. I think hearing that, speaking from experience too, there's a saying that in a phrase that I think if we can stop saying it or completely limit it from our vocabulary, getting on or getting off the bus, just doesn't really work like that, does it? Have we ever actually said that phrase and then it just goes super well and morale's high? Like typically not, because you're literally telling people you're on my team and we have all these shared values and goals. Oh, wait, but if you don't do this one thing, I'm leaving you in the dust. Like it doesn't, there's no trust in that statement at all. Now, do managers have to sometimes, go through a change that's best for everyone? What we're not trying to advocate for is complete inefficiency and this, only democracy and that, only that in your organization. But you can have relationships built, again, that foundation where the conversation's not, well, that person you just need to get on or get off the bus. But instead it's, tell me why, like, help me understand why this is such a problem. I don't see it. I don't understand it. I'm clearly missing something because I trust you and you do good work. Help me to understand what this problem is, and can we solve it? And if there isn't any ability to delay, what do I need to do to help you get prepared? Because we're willing to do so.
Yeah.
This, as we're talking, as you were just talking there, Abby, I am reminded that ultimately people just want to be understood and heard. And a lot of times that's what relationship building can look like. I am not here with an agenda other than just to hear what you have to say, whether it is, um, about a problem that you're having or something that you want to share. I think that's just taking the time to be able to do that in organizations. Yeah, our organizations get so focused on productivity and deliverables and all of those things, right? But how do you measure that people are feeling heard and like the organization is serving them instead of them just serving the organization? It's really important, and that's why I think we say influence is kind of an advanced skill. It's an advanced thing that maybe not every business analysis professional can do that. They may not even want to work in this realm, but man, when you can work here, and have influence and really see the benefits, you become, I'll use that term again because it's an actual term, trusted advisor.
Mm-hmm.
You can become in your organization a trusted advisor. Also, there's a book called The Trusted Advisor, and it's got a trustworthy equation that I really like, which has all of the elements that we've been talking about in this conversation.
That's awesome. I think the challenge of now looking back for us, it's neat to be able to look back and see like how that happened. I can see how daunting that would seem if you were just starting out in this journey, right? Like I can't influence the entire organization. Well, the cool thing about that is it really just starts with one relationship at a time. And it may be that it's you and your coworker in business analysis, right? Like it may be you and a person in another department that they want to come and run something by you, right? You become that trusted advisor of, hey, I've got this situation. What do you think about that? So as a business analyst, you're in a unique position to really have all of this knowledge and be able to connect some of those things so that if someone comes to you with that and you hear something, you can say, hey, that makes sense, but have you considered how this fits into this overall strategy? And you're able to connect that in a way to really help that person. And again, it happens one person at a time. So you can do it. just
Yeah.
dig in there and work on that one at a time.
Since y'all mentioned that, there's a book called Rocket Fueled. I wish I knew who the author was right off the top of my head, but that book, it's specifically geared towards a strategist relationship, like a CEO, and then their number two as an integrator is the terminology. But you don't have to just think about that relationship alone. You can think about that of who are business analysts in the organization. They're integrators to the visionaries. And that basically the whole book is teaching people how to serve in that integrator role. And it's all about trust. It's all about how do you stand firm in operations? How do you be the bad guy, sometimes delivering the bad news, right? But how do you do that in such a way that you are quite literally pulling together every piece of the organization to build a, like, the sum is greater than all of the parts strategy? It really suggests that people that have that business analysis, skill set, it really explains that they're what makes a company run for the future. So it really highlights that position. It highlights what an analyst does, and it kind of gives a little bit more step by step, maybe some skill sets. It's a great book because it has some charts and practical actions where it teaches you how to serve in that role, and ultimately you're tying together operations and strategy. So you're a very important role in the organization. And it's all built with kind of an influential relationship.
So just a reminder, for those listening to us live, we want your questions. So if you've got questions, make sure that you put them in. Abby, so this is another thing that I really like about the work that we do as business analysis professionals is that in many organizations we have the ability, sometimes the responsibility, but very often just kind of the tacit ability to work across teams and departments and silos in ways that other people can't. And if you are in an organization where you can do that because then you become an instrument to be able to help connect a lot of these ideas that are going on in different parts of the organizations in ways that people in a particular team or department or silo, they cannot. Um, and that is another great way to help you to build some influence, is being, having that kind of knowledge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We have a comment from a user here. I'm going to put it up on the screen. It's an interesting equation. Trust equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-orientation.
Yes, this is the trust equation from the Trusted Advisor. And so are you guys familiar with this? Do you know this equation?
No, and I'm not good at
This,
math, so this is
okay. I am not either, but I'm good at word problems. So there's that. So this one is based on, literally, I just was talking with someone about this the other day. It's probably, if you need help, I think this is a really good way of thinking about trust. So think of this as a lot, the top three over self-orientation. So credibility. Um, do you do what you say you're going to? Well, actually, credibility. Are you honest? Is what you say, is it correct? Reliability. Do you do what you say you're going to do? Intimacy. I know that sounds like a weird word to have in here, but it's really about openness and transparency. Are you willing to share when people tell you things in confidence? Do you keep that, just between the two of you? All of those things are over self orientation. Self orientation is about, um, if it is perceived that you are doing those things for the good of others, when you've got trust. If it's perceived that you are doing that only for your benefit, you will not have trust. You will not be somebody that is trusted. So this is, again, it's in the book, the Trusted Advisors. I think it's a great book. If you're an IIBA member, this book is available both in digital and audio format in the digital library.
that's
I know
really
what
cool.
I was going to
I
say. I
love
know
that.
what me and
Yeah.
Heath will be reading.
Yeah.
the rest of the week.
Yeah. There's something else about that that's interesting too, is that like that's a great equation for like how you operate. One of the things that Abby was really good at too, early on is also building others up. So when you're having that conversation with the business owner about whatever's happening, she was really good at saying, well, I worked with our compliance team, and they helped me out so much because they did some of these things, right? And so like you can also use that to help build others up in your organization, to build that trust, even if they haven't been able to have that one-on-one with another department. That's a great way to do that. So that was a cool thing that we noticed through this process for us too.
Yeah. And we are live, so mistakes happen. And for some reason, Abby's camera went
I
sideways.
stopped. I know.
Yeah. So everybody is wondering why sometimes, you just get all turned around. And so that just happens. I don't know. And I don't
I
know if
think
we
she
can
slipped
fix
on a
it.
banana peel.
That's
Susan, I
right.
think that's what it was.
Yes. But bump. Good job. More on the exploding
Sideways.
banana later. Let's see. Just a reminder. We still haven't had any questions, or at least I don't see any out there. I don't know if my feed is a little bit delayed today, but I don't see any questions.
Yeah, it looks late today.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
this is such an advanced topic that people don't understand it, or maybe they're getting it because Heath and Abby are explaining it so well.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. I'm going to go back because we had an opportunity to chat before we got together today, and Abby, you were talking about agile project management. We were kind of talking about influence as a part of agile project management, and I bet we will have listeners today who know something about that. How did you connect those two ideas? Do you recall? Because it was really interesting.
Yeah, when we were talking about building trust, agile project management is all focused on servant leadership. If you read the Agile Manifesto, that's the key element that it really talks about. And if you think what agile, I think a lot of people that know agile from a distance, they see that it means like software development, but really at the heart of it is that the fact that the team comes together kind of on their own accord, for the most part, with a common goal, because they have a common interest, and that's what they set their own team standards as a group. They have team retrospectives where they look back at the way that they were working and do these lessons learned, where they're constantly improving not just the project focus, but also how they're working together. And the underlying view of that is servant leadership, of how we're able to work in a way that's supporting each other and other business units. So process management is the same. It's the same concept. Really, process management and projects, they're so tied. And so when we talk about influence, that's one example of clearly taking the same principles of laying that foundation and formalizing it in a way that more people are adopting to, because it's worked out so well.
I think that we get hung up in any kind of agile discussion on the activities of some of these different practices, rather than really what agile is supposed to be about, which is about really people feeling that they have the ability to change the way that they work. Like, they don't need to be told that really they have the ability to do this on their own. It's about honesty and courage and all of those things. That's another way that you can see influence. I think is what you're saying, is really by adopting like agile values as opposed to just the practices. Well, let's see. We are starting to get some questions in. What do you think? Let's go take a couple of questions now. Alrighty. So this first question is, here we go, from Francisco. How does stakeholder analysis relate to mastering influence? Do they work together?
Yes, change management guy, go for it. Because I was like, this is perfect up your alley.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things I'll tell you how we've not done this well. How about that? Let me give you this example, because they do work together, but this is what happens when you don't. So many times in our history here, and for us, we've been here 7-8 years. We have seen projects happen where we have missed a stakeholder completely, or more than one stakeholder completely, and there's nothing that will diminish trust and influence more than when you leave someone who is a stakeholder out of a key decision or a key project, right? And so they do work well together. And part of that is, again, the humility to say, hey, if you're a stakeholder, you're an expert in this role. I'm not. And I need you to share with me. I need you to help me, right? Like there's some psychology to that. Like if you ask someone for help, like they actually trust you and like you more than if you just tell them to do a thing. There's some stuff out there about that, but it's asking them their opinion, their expertise on that, and that actually helps build trust with them because they are truly the expert in that. So just again, like Susan, you were saying earlier, we're humans. To be considered may be enough to help get you to that point.
That's that intimacy that's in the trust equation. That is a perfect example of what they mean by intimacy, that you are simply asking someone for for them to share something with you, and you are taking that into account, good, bad, or indifferent. That's what intimacy is. That's really it. Also, okay, so thank you, Francisco. Excellent question. Also, Abby, I'm going to share this with you. Sandeep suggests perhaps Control-Alt-Arrow might help you. I don't know if that'll work, but
don't know.
Just don't hit delete.
But there you go. Maybe that'll get you
I've tried.
right side.
She does this all the time, guys. Every meeting we're on, she's always sideways. This is nothing new.
And even when I try to change it, I am now upside down. So we're just gonna
We'll just go with it. All right. So let's see. I don't recall that. So this one came in. I think it was when we were talking about the trusted advisor. So this one is maybe not a completely formed question, but let's see if we can figure out what the question might be. So this is from Afrad. Trusted advisor, how? So maybe the question here is around using influence when you have conflict. Maybe that's kind of what this is asking us and how we
Yeah.
might be able to step in.
So we actually did do a conflict management presentation. Me and a team of colleagues who were in that influential space together doing process management. We actually taught a course on this. And the essence of that was when you are in conflict, there are sometimes that it's kind of, we focus more on the structure than the person. We've talked about that all day. Conflict can be relatively easy to resolve when you look at it much more from the personal aspect than the occurrence or than the structure of our complaint management or conflict resolution management thing. Sometimes I always think the same thing about when people say like member complaint management, like, yeah, I'm fine that there's a structure. I'm a process person. But when it becomes more about the process than the complaint, there's always a problem and it's never going to be perfectly resolved. And so it's just the same principles of servant leadership. We would say a trusted advisor, if you're practicing that trust, credibility, intimacy, that equation that I'm now never going to forget. If you're practicing that, the intimacy part of that is that you're going one-to-one with that person and you're able to ask, let's not talk about the action. Can we talk about the why? What was that root cause? And what did I do to maybe stoke that? Or what can I do to help resolve that? Like really, truly deferring to that person. And then if that doesn't work and you need an additional person, you find another trusted advisor, somebody that they trust and they have a relationship with, where they can help mediate before it goes to a more, if you can't resolve it from there, more formal. Truly, I think half of the reason that conflict management fails is because we go talk to 16 other people before we go talk to the person. It's hard. I get it, but it's not, once you've practiced it a couple times, just going directly and asking for an honest conversation, it gets pretty easy and you start having less conflict because again, you're building that basis of trust. I have found that the inverse of this is if you're building those relationships in that way, people come talk to you before it becomes a problem. And you start heading off stuff way in advance. I mean, little glimmers of things that I may have accidentally said incorrectly, people come right then and they're addressing it before we actually have conflict. And it's preventative because we have that trust. So I think it definitely relates kind of both ends.
I really like that because it reminds us that, one of the benefits to relationship building is that if conflicts don't rise to the level of personal issues. That if there is something that we disagree on, we're talking about it calmly and we're dealing with the issue. It's not the personal thing. That is a benefit of that. And maybe this is one last question, but maybe it's the converse of that. Um, Sushmit asked, could influence be a double-edged sword? Could there be a downside to influence? I think that is an interesting question.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. Maybe
It is a hard
he
one.
has stumped
That's
the
what I was reading.
speakers.
Actually, and I know Heath might be able to speak to it. Yeah, there is a downside. I'm actually in it right now. Right now, there is a discussion going on of when you actually over influence or when you over serve, right? There can be an accountability problem because you're allowing people to not be held accountable to not doing work or not knowing something. This is the more tricky one. Not knowing something they should know and not going and finding the knowledge. And especially business analysis professionals probably could get tricky here because you may see that trust become people start relying on you to go do the work to get the information, and an owner needs to do that. The flex there is you have to have you do need to have goals. I mean, there has to be metrics and goals that people are accountable to, but also there's in that trusting relationship, you must have boundaries. And I think I'm in a boundary setting mode right now where we had all this openness and now I'm being kind of forced to go back and put some boundaries in place, as well as build systems that are conducive to business owners being able to do the work themselves, but me still be a consultant, so that there's skin in the game there. And so it can backfire if you don't have those boundaries at 100%. You know, sometimes people will be like, all of a sudden, I feel like I'm being used a little bit, or I feel like there's this makes conflict even harder because we have more personal relationship. I think some of when we talk about empowerment and influence, that doesn't mean that you're going and crossing lines and building a personal relationship past professional. So there's boundaries that need to be there. I'm not saying you have best friends at work. You know, there's things there that people could go too far. But then on the empowerment line, trying to centralize absolutely everything and not allowing people to practice the things that you're teaching and even fail, and you being a coach and a mentor, you have to have that boundary as well. And so your relationship should evolve over time after you build the trust, and after you've built that up and you've served them. There does need to be some maturity to that relationship that they're helping themselves through applying the learning that you've given them, and applying the skill sets there. So that's tricky because it's one-to-one, but I do think that there's always a good assessment that should be done. And we do that formally. Informally, you do it on an individual level. Formally, we do that. We have process champions that we recognize. It's people that we have an influential relationship with, and we will assess yearly, just as a team, how are these relationships going now? Are we still in a good place? What do we know? Are we meeting with them? Are they, or are they submitting 10 to 20 requests a day, not really doing their job, but they're trying to really maybe overexert somewhere else? And what can we do to push that back and kind of pull them back into that appropriate lane?
Wow, that was I think a really great question to sort of wrap
Yeah.
it up and sort of show if you use this too much, it might have some backfiring. So thank you, Abby, for sharing that. That sort of gives people some boundaries of what to think about here as they use this skill more and more. This has been a wonderful conversation. So thank you, Abby. Thank you, Heath, for spending the time with Susan and I, working through this subject with people. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments on when we publish this on YouTube. We also publish it on a podcast. So if it stumps Susan or I, we're certainly going to reach out to you.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, so we've been talking about influence and where that could lead. Well, sometimes it could lead to some difficult conversations. Maybe that's something that you're a little worried about. Well, on our next Business Analysis Live, we have got a guest that's going to talk about how to have difficult conversations. So we look forward to seeing you then, 2 weeks from today at 10:30 Eastern. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and we'll leave another one right here for you to help you in your business analysis career. If you haven't subscribed to the IIBA YouTube channel yet, you can click over here and click on the bell icon to get notified every time we publish a brand new video.